Hello everyone, welcome to Sweet Tomato Vine Homestead. I'm Linda, and I decided I would take you all with me today while I pick some greens to have for supper tonight. So right now I'm just out in the garden and going through some of the raised beds and picking some greens. I'm out in the kids' raised bed right now, picking through, trying to find some of the larger leaves. I decided that I would try and use my knife, thinking that would help me to go faster, but it didn't. It had been raining earlier, and these greens were so tender and crisp, and they were very clean and bug-free. The smaller leaves are known to be the most tender green leaves, but it takes longer to pick those smaller leaves. So after picking in this area for a while, I decided that there weren't any more larger leaves, so I decided to go ahead and go to another raised bed. This may seem like a lot of work to pick some greens, but it is easier to go out in your yard and pick some greens than it is to drive to the store and go to the aisles and look at those expensive greens and other produce that they have, and then have to stand in line and pay for it and then come back home. I would much rather go out into my yard and pick my own food. And that way I know where it came from. I know what kind of fertilizers were put on it. I know if any pesticides have been put on it. I went from one side of the bed to the other, trying to find some larger leaves. There weren't very many large leaves, but I was able to get a nice bunch of greens out of that bed also. While I was picking these greens, I noticed that they smell so good. There was a nice aroma going through the air. It was like those greens were cooking already. They smelled so delicious. I really wasn't worried that there was taking a long time for me to pick the greens because I knew that they were going to be a good meal for us tonight. After leaving that bed, I went to the bed that I have my asparagus in, and there I was able to find some larger leaves. The greens in that bed were also bug-free and clean. I also was able to get some asparagus out of that bed. It was only a couple, but it's still asparagus, so I decided to get those and bring them into the house for the kids to eat. I was able to get more greens out of the asparagus bed than I was out of any of the other beds. Just because the leaves were much larger. After leaving the asparagus bed, I went inside the greenhouse to collect that one carrot that I had saw earlier. So I decided I would take it inside the house and prepare it for supper with some carrots that I already had inside the house. And then I started picking some of the cabbage leaves. And those cabbage leaves were so tender. They were also clean and bug-free. Then I decided I would go over to the raised bed that's in the greenhouse and pick a few sprigs of dill. After leaving the greenhouse, I went to the east side garden where I decided to pick some turnip greens to go with the other greens that I had already. The greens that I had picked out of the raised beds were mustard greens. So now I had mustard greens, turnip greens, and cabbage. Most of the time we think that when we pick greens that we are only going to use one type of green per meal. But it is very delicious to mix your greens and other brassica leaves. And this is the harvest that we ended up with. And this is the dinner that I made. Thanks for watching, guys.